Hey everyone, welcome back to Fighting Spirit Film Festival 2023. I'm back with a special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Kurtis Spieler, and I am the redirector of New York Ninja.
Describe yourself in three fictional characters.
Uh that's a little difficult because it's who do I think I am versus who people think I am. It's funny, my wife and I we joke around that we are a lot like Bob and Linda from Bob's Burgers. So I gotta go with Bob, even though I think I'm a little bit more like Luis. I gotta go with Bob from Bob's Burgers. Sarah Connor from Terminator 2. I only mentioned that basically because that's who my friends said I reminded them of her back like in my 20s. So I used to wear like camouflage pants and like black tank tops and a black hat all the time. And they said I reminded them of Sarah Connor. So I'll take it. She's badass. And then Brendan Small from Home Movies. I don't know if you've ever seen Home Movies, but being a kid growing up loving movies, I got to go with that too.
What were your first memories of film?
First memories of film. So I grew up watching movies. I grew up, my family was into movies, which was cool. We kind of did a lot of like weekend trips and all that kind of stuff. I was trying to think the earliest film memory that I have is probably going to the drive-in when I was younger to see, I think it was Karate Kid Part 2, which would have made me about 5 at the time. So I don't really remember the movie, but I remember going to the drive-in. So that's probably like one of my earliest movie memories.
Can you tell us about the first film you ever made?
Like the first like short film or the first like feature length?
First short. What
First
was the first ever thing you ever made?
Oh man. Well, my friends and I we used to make like skate videos. I used to skateboard and stuff back when I was a teenager. So that's kind of how I started doing little like videos. We didn't have as much access to cameras as we do nowadays, so that was a little difficult. But we started doing skate videos, and then, for fun, we started making our own movies because we obviously all enjoyed movies. And we made this silly short called The Run, where it was just like a couple of guys chasing each other. It was kind of inspired by the chase scene in Point Break. So that was kind of the first thing that I ever did. That was completed from beginning to end. It had music, it had credits, it had all that kind of stuff. Everything else was just kind of playing around before that. So I was a teenager. I don't remember exactly how old though.
What drew you to horror and how did you find your style of filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big horror fan. I love the genre, not just the movies, but from like a filmmaking standpoint, it allows a lot of creativity and freedom. A lot of other genres, there's a certain expectation, but I think horror, people kind of expect you to break the expectations sometimes. So I think there's a lot of freedom there. I think also it allows for low budget filmmaking, which, anybody who's starting, myself included, when you're first trying to make a feature length film, or even a short, you're going to be limited to your budget. And I think horror is one of the few genres that allows you to work within the confines of a budget.
Was film preservation something you were interested in before you started working at Vinegar Syndrome?
No, I didn't really know much about film preservation. I knew about film from film school and shooting film. I didn't really learn about preservation till later on. And then I've learned a lot since I've gotten the job here. One of the ways that I kind of became part of the company was because of my experience in production. So that was something that they were like kind of looking to get into here. And I've learned a lot about preservation since I've been here. And I absolutely love it.
How was the original New York Ninja footage discovered?
Yeah, so there was a company called 21st Century Distribution. They went out of business, and it was before I started working here, but the owners made a deal with Arthur Schweitzer. He was the owner, and he still had a lot of films that he owned the rights to. So one of the owners here, Ralph Stevens, bought a bunch of film from Arthur Schweitzer. And when they went to pick it up, they had this pallet and they were doing the inventory. And on the pallet was something called New York Ninja. And at the time, Ralph didn't know what that was. Nobody really did. And he was like, oh, we didn't ask for this. And Arthur had said, well, it's a film that was unfinished. I don't know what to do with it. It's yours, you know. Otherwise, it's just going to get thrown away. So it ended up in our film archive, and it sat there for a couple of years. And then I started working here. I found out about it, and we started looking into it. And I presented to the owners here of letting me finish it. So
What were your first thoughts when you watched the original footage, like all of the footage that there was?
yeah, so it took us a little while to go through it all. We had talked about finishing this, but at the time nobody had seen anything. So I remember the very first reel that we put on to watch, and it was actually all the raw shots of the fight scene down by the water, where the John Liu character has like the memorial for his wife, and then he fights the punks. That's the very first footage that I saw. Instantly when we saw that, we knew we had to finish this. Like, I couldn't wait to see the rest of it. It took us time to scan all the footage, and then part of my job, my very first part of the workflow, was to just go through and like catalog the footage and see what was there, because we didn't know if we had enough to even complete the film. So I just kept going through the footage on like nights and weekends, and every time I saw something new, it was like exciting, and it was crazier. And he was on roller skates and hanging from a helicopter and all that. It was pretty cool.
Recreating the dialogue, what was the process like, and how did you reconstruct the script?
Yeah, so that was tough. That was a long process. So we knew we were going to have to do that from the very beginning. So as I was going through the footage for the very first time, basically what I did was just take notes on everything as I went through, and I started kind of piecing together at least the story from the very beginning. Once I figured out like the flow and like the rhythm and how I kind of wanted the movie to go, I edited it the best way that I could, and then I had to write the dialogue to kind of match what was there. The way I did it was basically, luckily it's not a very dialogue heavy movie, and the performances are very big and over the top. So I was able to read the lips for a lot of it. And basically what I did was read the lips. If I could figure out what they were saying, I would use those couple of words and then just build the lines before and after that. And then once I knew like basically what the plot was and what I wanted the plot to be, I just had to figure out a way to get across the information that I needed to get across. So, using shots where it's like over somebody's shoulder where you can't see their mouth, that kind of stuff helps. And then you can fill it with the things that you need to. And I just kind of went back and forth between each scene, kind of, adjusting the dialogue and then adjusting the edit and then adjusting the dialogue and then adjusting the edit till it got to a point where the mouths match to some extent.
How did you do the casting for the dub?
All the casting was done through other people. How do I say this? We used actors that have been in other Vinegar Syndrome movies.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew this going into it when we were interested in casting voice actors for this. The owners and myself, we made the decision early on to just use people who were in other films that Vinegar Syndrome has put out. So somebody like Linnea Quigley, for example, we've put out a number of her films. I mean, we were hoping we'd be able to get her, but she was very enthusiastic, but like she was definitely top of our list. And then, we kind of just went through like our catalog of films and tried to pick actors that we thought would fit the roles. Most people said yes. There were a couple of people we had reached out to and it didn't really work out, but for the most part, everybody that we went after said yes. And so that was great. It was actually a pretty easy process. So we were lucky to get a lot of the people that we did.
I was really happy when I watched it because I realized you guys didn't whitewash the main character, and I was like, oh, you didn't whitewash the main character. That's all we asked for.
Well, that was that was really hard because at the time we hadn't been doing a lot of action films. Like Vinegar Syndrome was doing a lot more horror and exploitation, and we were just kind of getting into action films. And trying to pick somebody to be the ninja was really difficult, especially for that. There's not a lot of like Asian genre actors, and it was kind of hard too, because it's like you wanted somebody that was Asian, but also sounded American to fit the character. And luckily, we ended up getting the rights to release a Don the Dragon Wilson movie. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh my God, we've got to use Don. That he would be perfect. And luckily, he said yes, and it was great.
What was the hardest part of reconstructing New York Ninja? What was the best part of reconstructing the film?
I mean, the hardest part was really like I didn't have a lot of footage to work with. It was very low budget, as you could tell, and so the shooting ratio was low. So sometimes you'd only have one, maybe two takes of certain things, and so figuring out how to edit this stuff and make a cohesive scene, especially when it seemed like some scenes weren't finished shooting, trying to take the footage that was there and make a coherent scene and then a coherent story and make everything flow. That was kind of the hardest part, especially the ending, which I've talked about a lot with the helicopter explosion. The ending wasn't really finished, so I had to come up with a creative way to end the movie, and I think that worked really well. And I mean, that to me, that's actually kind of the best part. Was the hardest part became the best part, because when I had trouble making these scenes work, when I eventually was able to make them work, and then when they started coming together, it was exciting, and I was like, oh wow, we really we can finish this movie. So
You commissioned Voyager 3 for the film score. How did you collaborate together to make the final score?
yeah, so I had heard of Voyager 3 before, but one of my coworkers, Brandon Upson, he was the one who recommended them, because we knew we wanted to kind of have somebody who understood like 80s music, but we also wanted to use like a band, not just a single person to do the score. So finding the right band was difficult. And so when Brandon had recommended Voyager 3, I listened to their music and I instantly fell in love, and we just reached out to them, and the collaboration was actually really easy. Steve Green, who's kind of the like front man for the band, he was on board right away, and talking to him, he got it right away. I showed him the footage. I sent him like a silent version of the movie, and he started the score right away. And so he would just kind of go back and forth with me, being like, hey, this is what I'm thinking here, this is what I'm thinking there. And it was frankly like a pretty easy process. Steve was great to work with. I remember even the first time he sent me the full score to listen to, obviously we made adjustments and moved some things and changed it, but like the very first like pass that he did was so good. I was excited from the very beginning. So I'm really, really proud of what those guys did.
Have you been able to reach out to John Liu, or were you able to contact anybody from the original production?
Yeah, so there was no real notes, no casting, no credits, no nothing really to work off of. The only person that we recognized from the film was John Liu, because he was known in the martial arts community. We tried to reach out to him, but we couldn't. We exhausted a lot of effort early on, but we didn't get anywhere. We've heard he's living in Vietnam, but we don't know for sure. As far as the rest of the people, that's been really interesting, because we were able to track a few people down early on. Adrian Meltzer, she's the person who played the reporter in the movie. We were able to track her down, and then she was able to give us some information. Unfortunately, some people had already passed away. So the actor who played Rat Tail, he unfortunately passed away. The actor that played Freddie Cufflinks unfortunately passed away. That made it difficult to find some of the people. But as the movie has come out now, people have come forward, and we've found a few other people. So the Detective Williams, we recently found out who he was, as a actor named Jeff Ward. He actually does a lot of stunt work in Hollywood now, which is really great. We were also able to track down Joseph Zwick, who was the original production manager. He came to a screening. We did a screening of the film at the Roxy in New York, and he came to the screening, and that was really great, because he had been telling his family about this movie for years, and it was never finished. Nobody really believed him, and not only was he impressed that we found it, but he was impressed that we were able to finish it, because he was there every day. He knew that the production was a bit of a mess. They were kind of just winging it, making stuff up as they went along. He gave me a lot of great stories about the original production. So yeah, we're still finding people, and I hope we still find people as time goes on, and we keep adding them to our IMDb. So yeah, it's cool.
What was your favorite part about the final film?
My favorite part about the final film was honestly just watching it with an audience. I worked on it a lot myself. Obviously, there was a lot of other people who were involved, but I did a lot of the heavy lifting early on, and it was a lot of long nights and weekends, just going through the footage, editing, writing the new dialogue. And so for a good amount of time, I was the only one who really knew the footage and all that. And to finally be able to release it to the public and to have people see it for the first time. Honestly, the very first audience experience I had with it, people were like cheering at the very beginning, and that was great. I mean, that was such a great feeling to finally be able to show this to people and have them be as excited as I was when I was working on it.
What is the best feedback you got for reworking New York Ninja?
Honestly, the best feedback is when people don't realize that it was finished 30 years later. I've run into a couple of people who thought that it was just like a discovered lost film. I mean, that's great because, we worked really hard to try to make sure that the sound effects sounded appropriate for the time, and that the dialogue and the way everything sounded, the music, the editing, the credits, that they all matched the time period. Because, my hope is that people just see it as this like sort of undiscovered lost film and not realize the work that went in 30 years later. I mean, to me, that's actually like the biggest compliment. So
Do you have any upcoming projects you can tell us about?
not that I could talk about. Vinegar Syndrome, we've got a lot going on here. We have our Vinegar Syndrome Pictures, which is not only just original productions, but it's also acquiring films from the film festivals and hopefully finding some more lost films. So we've got a couple irons in the fire right now, and hopefully I'll be able to announce something in the near future.
Now, time for speed round. So for this, you pick one film for each category. What is your favorite film from your favorite filmmaker?
Um, Kill Bill by Quentin Tarantino. I'm a big Tarantino fan. A lot of what he's done for the genre, for just genre films in general. I love his work, and I love that Kill Bill opened up a world of like genre movies, samurai films, martial arts films, exploitation films to like a whole new generation of people.
What is the best film from the 80s?
Best film from the 80s. So for me, I have to say The Predator, just because not I was raised on action films, but I got into horror films probably like right around like my early teens, maybe a little bit younger, 12, around that age. And The Predator bridged that gap for me because I was like watching a bunch of action films, and then I saw The Predator and I was like, oh man, this movie's crazy. It was violent, it was gory, the creature effects were awesome, and like I instantly got into horror films right after that. So that was like influential for me.
What film has the best soundtrack?
So, well, best soundtrack, like actual songs, I would say Miami Connection. I love that soundtrack. If you've never seen Miami Connection, Vinegar Syndrome has put it out. You've got to see it. There's a band called Dragon Sound that does all the music for it. It's great. My wife and I actually played one of the songs at our wedding. That's how much we like it. So Miami Connection, check it out. Soundtrack is killer.
Your favorite person, what is their favorite film?
I mean, that's that's a tough question. I mean, the only way I can answer that is honestly my wife. I mean, she's my favorite person. And she loves Valley Girl with Nicolas Cage. She's obsessed with that movie. She's obsessed with Nicolas Cage, and I can't blame her. Although I don't see the appeal for Valley Girl, but she loves it. So
And lastly, which cinematic universe would you like to live in?
I mean, honestly, probably the Tarantino universe, just because I wish people were that cool in real life. I wish the dialogue was that cool in real life. Yeah, I don't know. I love his movies. I love what he's done for just the genre, but yeah, it would be like living in a real life movie. So
Thank you very much. Thank you for the interview. And everyone, don't forget to check out Vinegar Syndrome and stay tuned for Fighting Spirit Film Festival 2023.